Welcome to Lead for Good, a podcast for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. This is a show where the audience will meet and get to know top nonprofit leaders. Together, we will take a deep dive into nonprofit leadership, endeavoring to uncover and unpack the most important characteristics, traits, strategies, and actions of successful nonprofit leaders. Through this journey together, we desire to help you, the nonprofit leader, grow your knowledge and capabilities to lead for good. We want you to achieve your full potential as leaders in the sector. So, welcome to the conversation. We're glad you joined us today. Without further delay, let's join our host, Chris Looney, as he interviews yet another extraordinary leader who is truly leading for good. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Lead for Good, a show for nonprofit leaders of all titles and experience levels. My name is Chris Looney, and I have the good fortune to be your host for this deep dive into nonprofit leadership. Our show endeavors to cover the most important leadership topics with the goal of helping the audience reach their full potential as nonprofit leaders. Today, we welcome Chris Simonsen, who is the Chief Executive Officer at the Orangewood Foundation, a very large nonprofit providing innovative services that uplift and empower young people who face challenges across Orange County. Chris is an extraordinary nonprofit leader known well for being an authentic servant leader and a true collaborator. The audience is in for a real treat today with this interview as we dig into Chris's leadership journey and then also transition into his experience moving from the CFO role to the chief executive role and what that really looks like. So welcome to the show, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here, Chris. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, great to be with you and see you as well. And let's start with your leadership sort of origin story, if you will. Please tell us a little bit about how you became the leader you are today.
Well, I started out my career in the for-profit finance world, and I did that for a number of years, and I steadily was moving into higher roles of leadership as I moved to different organizations, and I was fortunate enough to be in the finance team at the Auto Club of Southern California, AAA, a
Cool.
very, very large organization, and was hoping to get a lot of opportunity to really grow into an executive leadership role there. And that did happen. I started as a manager, was promoted to the vice president controller, and did that for 5 years, and then was promoted up to the chief financial officer and was doing that for a couple of years. So, there I was at age 40, and I have kind of achieved the career path that I had set out for myself as a college graduate, working for a $3 billion organization as their CFO and, making a lot of money and having a great career with lots of challenges and opportunities. But it just wasn't giving me the satisfaction that I really wanted for a number of different reasons. It was a lot of hours, and having 4 kids that were small at the time, it was a
Okay.
challenge balancing all of that. There were some differences in my style and the culture that, I was struggling with as well. So out of the blue, I got a letter on my desk from a headhunter that said, hey, a nonprofit needs a CFO. And I kind of took that as a sign that I should look into this, and called him up. And I didn't know anything about Orangewood Foundation or foster youth or homelessness, nothing. But when I met with everybody, I just really loved the mission. I had always worked with youth, having 4 kids, coaching soccer, doing Indian guides, Indian princesses, things like that. And just really spoke to me. And they had this great goal of building a charter school to help more foster youth get through high school, which you were part of that project with us, Chris. So, I kept going through the interview process, and, everyone kept kind of asking, well, what are you doing here? We're this small little nonprofit. You're at this humongous place. But, I just explained to them, look, I've got to get some things back in alignment in my life, and it looks like you guys could use some help here, and you got this big project you're looking at. So they made me an offer at 30% of what I was making, and
Right.
and I took it, and it was the best decision I ever made. It
And
was,
here we thought you were smart, right?
yeah, exactly. You thought I knew numbers.
You do
So
know this is less, right?
yeah, I did know that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, it started my career as the CFO of Orangewood Foundation. And my timing was impeccable because, 9 months later, the recession of 2008, 2009, 2010 hit. And, managing through that with minimal amount of reserves and
hmm
just, services are going up, donations are going down. It made me question, like, did I make the right decision?
Tested your metal, I'm sure.
What was I thinking, But I was glad I was there because, I really was instrumental in helping the organization get through that tough time. And it was a challenge. We had to make a lot of tough decisions along the way, but we emerged from that. And around 2011 is when we found a piece of property to build our charter school. So that was an amazing project that I got to lead from day one, hiring everybody to build the campus, collaborating with you on, part of the fundraising aspect of the project. And 2 years later, we had our first class
That's
with
right.
kids in portable classrooms, and we were raising money to build our campus. And here we are today, 12 years later, with a $70 million campus, and we got 825 students, and we've got our graduation this Friday night of our,
Yeah,
let's see, this will be our sixth or seventh class of alumni, and we've got alumni that are now done with college. And so
right.
it's just been a very rewarding process. And, right when the school opened in 2013 is when I got promoted to CEO. And,
Okay.
there aren't a lot of CEOs in the nonprofit world that came through the finance track. A lot of them come through programs or development.
Right.
So I was kind of a unicorn there, but I'm thankful that the board had confidence in me and my ability to lead the organization and my ability to be able to fundraise and connect with people. And yeah, so here it is, 12 years later, and
Mm,
we've really grown the organization a tremendous amount and increased our impact. We're serving many more young people than we ever have. And unfortunately, the need continues to grow, so there's more to
sure.
do. So we're always looking for our next challenge and our next project. And just finished up our strategic plan for the next 3 to 5 years. So we're excited about that and moving forward there. So it's been a
That's
great,
great.
almost 18 years, and I'm not going anywhere yet. So I'm looking forward to the next, 5 years or so.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that you're not stale, that you're continually being challenged and rewarded by the growth of your impact. I love the fact that you came to the nonprofit sector not with this sort of maybe thought that they don't know anything about anything, and finally there's going to be someone coming over from the for-profit sector who can, run things perfectly or more like a business, but rather it was, I want to bring the expertise I have in this financial world, and also connect deeply to a mission that I care about as well. And I think that sort of authentic kind of desire to help with expertise, but also just to be a servant leader is so rare and so wonderful to hear.
No, thanks, Chris. Yeah, I mean, I just really have enjoyed my time at Orangewood Foundation. I mean, it doesn't even really feel like work or a job. I get up every day and I get to try to help young people, achieve their goals and get back up on their feet. And, of course, we have an amazing team at Orangewood, 120 employees and then another 110 over at the school. And, you know, when you work at a place where everyone is very focused on the mission and everyone's asking, the first question we ask every day is what's best for our youth, and
Mm.
to be surrounded by people that have a good heart, that truly care about others, whether it's our staff or our donors or our volunteers. I mean, that's a unique environment to be able to have the privilege of working in and day out. And I just really appreciate our team and the community that supports Orangewood Foundation, and in turn is supporting these young people that really need somebody in their corner to help them.
Yeah, yeah, and it's needed, and it's so important to have mission-minded folks that care about these things, doing the work, and that are willing to ask those kinds of questions when they show up to work about the youth or the client, the recipient of the services that a nonprofit provides, as opposed to how can what I'm doing today make me richer, make me stronger, better, personally, right?
Yeah.
It is quite a different perspective for many to have, and makes um, the work that you all do so unique and special for sure. Dare I ask what might have been or might continue to be your favorite role of all of the different leadership roles that you had, and what makes that particular leadership role so special?
Well, I was in a lot of different positions in my finance career, and I picked up knowledge in all of those and had, different positive and negative experiences in those different roles. But I mean, I love my current role because I never thought of myself as just a finance person, a bean counter, an accountant. Like
Right.
I love building relationships. I love interacting with people, getting to know people. And, one thing about my job now is every day is different. And most every day I get to meet with people, whether it's our team, but, a lot of people in the community, whether it's, donors or organizations or my fellow nonprofit leaders, and get to know them. And also, I've been spending a lot of time recently trying to further what we call our network nonprofit model at Orangewood, which is, you know, trying to leverage relationships and partnerships with other nonprofits that are doing great work and seeing how we can collaborate to get more done with less resources, but by combining our strengths, we can provide some new resources for our young people to take
Mm.
advantage of. And so I enjoy that innovative, creative aspect of my job, trying to come up with solutions to these, large problems that our young people are trying to overcome.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. Well, how have you been influenced by mentors, or those that might have been what they call sponsors in a different era? Who have been the people that have really helped shape you and your leadership over the years?
Well, I'd say early on in my career, I got to work for some really good leaders when I was at Ernst and Young, when I was at my second job of my career at an insurance company here in Irvine. Just had some really good people that cared about their teams, were very bright, very smart. Um, and then, on the flip side of that, there are some people that I worked for that uh, you understand that they have some characteristics or the way of leading people that is something I did not want to emulate. And
Fair. Yeah, absolutely.
that really helped shape who I was when I came to Orangewood Foundation. And um, it really kicked in when I became CEO. But I'd say picked up some bad habits maybe along the way, and so I really spent a lot of time trying to read a lot and understand what great leadership was, from people like John Maxwell and Stephen Covey and people like that. And
Sure.
really the thing that resonated with me the most and what I've carried forward to this day is being a servant leader. And um, it really flipped my mindset as far as, what my role is supposed to be. You know, so every new employee that comes to Orangewood Foundation goes through what we call our passport process, and they meet individually with our senior leaders and do some other things, visit some of our sites. But I get to spend an hour with each of them, and what I tell them is, I really have two jobs at Orangewood Foundation. It's serving our youth and serving our team. And every day, whatever I'm working on should be addressing one or both of those things. And
Very good.
I really take that to heart. And I'm here to provide the support, the resources that our team needs to be able to meet every need that our young people have as best as we can. And so, fundraising I do, or the collaborations that we're working on for housing or, workforce development, all those things, ultimately are helping our team provide more options for our young people. And, and I also have a duty to our team to provide them a safe and healthy workplace, a place that has opportunity for growth, where they're getting personal and professional development constantly. We're supporting them and their families. I care about all of our team members deeply and their families, and have a responsibility to make sure that when they are working at Orangewood Foundation, they feel safe and secure about their role there. They're not going home every night complaining to their partners about their jobs. They've had a good day, and so we spend a lot of time devoting our resources to making sure that we're accomplishing that for our employees.
It's great. I normally have to proactively ask about someone's leadership philosophy, but you were quick to identify yours as servant leadership, and the way you followed it up with talking about the focus on your team and the kids, obviously, is so great. It's always that focus on the health and well-being of others, and not necessarily all about yourself, right? So kudos to you for adopting such a strong leadership philosophy. I'm sure it's helped you immensely.
Yeah, it has. And I guess if there was another thing that I really take to heart, it's uh, that there's always so much to do. Like, there's no point in kind of coasting and taking it easy. Like, we should always be challenging ourselves to keep improving, keep getting better, and keep growing, keep expanding, because the need is not shrinking. And if you're standing still, before you know it, 5 years from now, you kind of open your eyes and realize you're not really as impactful as you were before. And
Right, right.
so, we're always constantly trying to figure out ways that we can expand our programs and services, expand who we serve. I mean, for the first 30 years of our existence, we basically only served foster youth and former foster youth. But about 8, 9 years ago, as part of our strategic planning, we really challenged ourselves to ask why we were putting these labels on these young people in need and turning away young people that really needed someone to support them and help them. And we kind of did away with all our internal rules and guidelines about who qualified for programs and who didn't, and just basically said, look, any teen or young adult that is struggling, that has a need for someone to help them, we're going to welcome them into Orangewood Foundation. And that made a huge difference in our ability to grow and expand as an organization, because it changed our mindset from thinking about foster youth and former foster youth only to, wow, our young people have all these characteristics. They're experiencing homelessness. Some of them are survivors of human trafficking. We have young moms. We have youth struggling with mental health issues. all these other characteristics, we started saying, well, we could apply for funding with this group over here because they support, human trafficking work. And over here, we could, submit a mental health grant. So
Right.
really helped us bring more resources in the organization, including government grants that we had never really applied for. We had no state grants at all and did a lot of our program support through fundraising. And we were not really balanced as far as our operating model was concerned. We were way too high on our fundraising, probably 85%. So we made a conscious effort to look for more opportunities that aligned with our mission in the government space and found a number of state grants that we were successful in getting about 6, 7 years ago that just opened up all these opportunities for us because now these pots of fundraising money that were going to running our drop-in center, for example, we could reallocate those to something else because we got a state
Right.
grant for that. And
Right. Right.
so we just continue to build on that. And, like I keep saying, there's a lot to do. And, we love the work that we do and we think we're really good at it. And the youth trust us and find Orangewood to be a safe place. So
Yeah.
we just got to keep looking to see how we can do more.
Yeah. Well, you've earned such a great reputation as an organization for the impact that you have, and I know it's a combination of the actual work that you're doing, but also having so many great ambassadors and champions as part of the organization as well, not just on staff, but you've got tremendous volunteers and board members who love the organization and do so much for it, which is really cool. And I really appreciate that idea of continuing to push ahead and do more and work harder and not stand still. Um, it's interesting because I've just recently been kind of reading the histories of bailouts of for-profit companies and the lessons that weren't really learned by those companies when they were given these gifts to keep them solvent, right? And for the nonprofit world, if there's no one bailing you out, for one, so you can't just sit there and hope to survive by not moving because no one's going to come to your rescue. That's one thing. And number two is that there's not anyone that's going to just come along and do what you do necessarily. There's not there's not another Orangewood out there. And so if you disappear, you fail for whatever reason, these kids are in deep trouble. And I always have to remind people about how sensitive and delicate the nonprofit sector and space is. And if you do something to disrupt that sector, you're putting lives in danger. And it's easy to just overlook it, but the impact of failing to support the sector is detrimental to society. And I don't know if you have a readout on that.
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, the gap that would be created if Orangewood went away would be immense for, young adults in Orange County. And, it's my responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. And, like I said, there were some tough times in 2008, 2009, 2010. And, when I took over as CEO, one of the things I wanted to do was kind of reinvent our operating model so that it would make us sustainable for the long term. And
Mhm.
so, we've grown our endowment from 2 million to 30 million. We've built a school. We've got resources. And, as much as, you could say, oh, well, I was, instrumental in doing that. But you brought it up earlier. I mean, really, it's the community of Orange County that has helped us get to where we are today. We have such tremendous long-term support from so many individuals and foundations and corporations that, are entrusting their philanthropic dollars to us knowing that we're going to make an impact with those dollars. And, it's all about relationships, them trusting us, to deliver on what we say. And, I really take that to heart. And, but at the end of the day, it does come down to two people, aligning their goals. Orangewood Foundation has goals that we want to accomplish. Our strategic plan is a perfect example of that. And philanthropists and donors out there, they have their own individual goals and what they want to accomplish with their philanthropy. So, when my friends joke around with me and say, well, you have to go ask for money all day long, I said, no, what I'm doing is building relationships with people in the community. And I'm trying to find out what is it that they're trying to accomplish with their
Right.
philanthropy. And I can let them know how Orangewood's programs and services might be able to help them accomplish that. And at the end of the day, if those things line up, then they feel great because their goals are being met. And then I'm bringing in more resources to the organization. But if I meet someone that, you know, their primary goal is to save the whales, that's fine. That's a great goal, but it's not something that's going to line up with Orangewood Foundation. And so, we meet, we have a nice interaction, but there's not going to be a long-term relationship there with them. But we do so many things. That's kind of what makes Orangewood Foundation unique is, many nonprofit organizations specialize in housing or
Right.
workforce development or, those different silos, and that's fine. We need those nonprofits to do that. We've built out kind of a whole continuum of programs and services so that when young people come to us initially, I mean, our first job is to build trust with them and get them to feel comfortable and safe. And once we've done that, then we can start talking about, okay, what's your situation? What goals do you have for the future? And start working on those with them one by one. And it's a lot easier to do that under one roof than telling them, okay, well, go get on a bus and go down, 3 miles, get on this other bus and go to this organization. They can help you with your housing or, I mean, our young people, they don't have cars, most of them. And so if they can do everything in one place and it's a place they know and trust, then that's much better for them. So
Right.
we don't do everything, and we do have partners that are great at what they do to fill in the gaps, but we're trying to do as much as we can within our four walls so that our young people can just go to the place that they know and trust.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. That's so perfect. Well, let's move into a little bit of the theme of today's conversation, which is the discussion about your transition from the finance world and the job of Chief Finance Officer into the role of Chief Executive Officer. I know you had said earlier that it's a bit unusual to have someone from finance coming into the chief executive role, and I don't disagree with that. Though more recently, you'll see in the hospital world quite a few CFOs moving into chief executive roles because the understanding of the finances in that particular area of nonprofit work is so complex and a bit unique and elevated in terms of the requirements to understand the certain, finance angles. So what I'm interested though is how you found that transition. I mean, you're a leader, you're a natural born leader, so it was quite natural for you to become the CFO and quite natural, I think, for the board to tap you to become the chief executive. But there must have been an interesting sort of learning process when you made that transition from CFO to CEO. And I just wanted to dig into that. What did you learn when you made that switch?
Well, uh, it didn't happen immediately. I'll say that when our CEO left, I was kind of on a 6-month trial period with the board.
Okay,
Even some of them were a little bit unsure. Well, yeah, he's great at finance and all those things, but is he going to be able to be the face of the organization and speaking with donors and raising money? And those were things
sure.
that I didn't have the responsibility of doing. I did a little bit of it as the CFO. I mean, I did develop some relationships with our donors, but it wasn't a primary responsibility. So they did decide to give me that opportunity. And I think, the biggest change, I guess, is really, you have to change your mindset. CFOs, in my opinion, probably know the organization better than anybody else, except the CEO, and maybe sometimes better than more than the CEO.
Fair. That is
You
fair.
know, and I was in charge of HR and our legal and facilities and IT and finance. So it wasn't just
Wow.
the books; it was a lot of operational things too. So
Interesting.
I knew a lot, and I also knew how the programs all worked from the economics of them and everything. So
Right.
the biggest piece was development and fundraising, and so that was not something though that I was intimidated by, or I enjoy meeting people, building relationships with them. It was just a matter of demonstrating that I could do it, and it was an exciting challenge for me, and I was looking forward to it, and I really, as I said earlier, enjoy the variety of my job and all the different aspects of our organization that I get to be involved with every day, every week, every month. It's always changing, and so it's really just changing that mindset as a CFO. You're constantly trying to make sure that we're saving money where we can, that, we're being good stewards of our donors' funds. And, back when I first took over, 2013, we were struggling along. We were doing okay, but, like I said, we didn't really have a financial model that gave me a lot of confidence that, we were in the clear, right? And that we
Sure.
had all
Sure.
this money set aside for a
Mhm.
rainy day. I mean, we didn't have those things.
Your
So,
asset base was pretty low too, I imagine at that time.
very, very low. Yeah. So um, it was something that I had to focus on, that aspect of our business. Like, how do we kind of transform the way we operate and not rely so much on donors and kind of get a better balance there? So my financial skills helped in that area, of course. Our culture needed some work. And so I spent a lot of time my first couple of years focusing on that aspect of our organization. And we did a lot of leadership development around trust and communication and just,
Hmm.
different aspects of having a stronger culture. And then we also divested of a few programs that were kind of legacy programs that we had that didn't really align with our mission that well. They might have financially been contributing to the organization in the past, but now we were actually subsidizing some of those programs,
Interesting. Yeah.
for the county. So, we had to make decisions like that. We also had to, ask some people to leave that we're kind of dragging our culture down. So, you know, you don't do all those things immediately. You want to get the lay of the land and make sure you understand everything that's going on. But, we did change, and I already told you about just broadening out who we serve and not turning away young people in need. That was a big, big shift for us. And some longtime donors, struggled a little bit with that, and
I bet.
we explained to them, hey, most of the young people we're still serving were in the child welfare system. I mean, even today, we've been doing this for 10 years now with, broader guidelines. 60% or so of the young people we serve were in foster care. So it's still a majority of who we serve, but we just don't want to turn away, others in need. So,
Great.
yeah, but I would say the transition initially was, a bit of a challenge. And, I had to get my mindset shifted around, thinking more about the longer term and, things
Yeah.
like marketing and PR and stuff like that, that I, didn't really have to do much of that in my CFO role, but really enjoy all those things now and don't want to go back to finance only.
Good. Yeah, that's an important lesson. No regrets. Glad I did it, but and it was a stepping stone, but eager to stay in this chief executive role. I wonder, because the move required you to step into an enhanced role in fundraising and also working directly with the board members, both on the engagement of them and stewardship of them, but also recruiting new board members. Was there a moment where you knew or you could tell that they had accepted you as the right person to be CEO? Was there some event or just some feeling, some amount of time? What was it that made you feel, and maybe it was them saying, "Okay, we're ready to give you this title," but was there something that happened that made you know you were now accepted?
That's a good question. I mean, I took over right when the school opened, and we had our capital campaign that we were underway with, and I think they were impressed that I was able to lead that effort up to that point to get the school up and running.
Mhm.
But then as they started to see us be able to raise money for our capital campaign for the school, get some new buildings built, um, those were things that I think helped them feel more comfortable that, hey, this guy, we knew he could lead his finance team and everything else, but to lead the whole organization and keep things moving on an upward trajectory, I think that was something that gave them a lot of confidence that they had made the right decision. And I think when we got our first state grant, uh, which went to pay for our drop-in center, and we still have that grant today, I think it freed up like $500,000 of fundraised dollars that we could then invest
Yeah,
somewhere else.
beautiful.
And so I think it was something like that that made them realize that, okay, we're going to be doing things a little differently here. And it looks like they're finding opportunities that we haven't explored before.
Right.
And so I think that excited them that we were able to bring in new resources and then expand our programs um, and we had a longer term plan for these things. But I don't know if there was one defining moment, but uh, I think all those things contributed to them being excited about putting me in that role.
Yeah. There's so many folks that are interim in leadership positions, not only CEO interims, but all kinds of interims. And I know that they struggle with this concept of getting the job. What do I need to do? What is it that I need to produce in order to go from interim and internal candidate, I guess, to actually getting that job. And it's hard, because I suppose every organization is a little bit different, and each of them is looking for something slightly different, But you found a way. You found a way to turn that interim kind of role into a permanent role, and maybe it's trust, maybe it's success, maybe it's uh, the combination of all of these things. I don't know.
Yeah, I think if I had to, throw out a couple things, one, when people get the interim tag, it's easy to go back into what you're comfortable doing and what you do well. But what the board is looking for is, can you do these other things that you haven't done before that you
Right.
might be new to you? So I think while you're in that interim role, you still got to do those things that you were doing before. I was still the CFO when I was the interim CEO. So I still had to take care of those things, but they knew I could do those things already. So I had to demonstrate to them that I could raise money. And the other thing is I had to build relationships with the board members. I mean, they had seen me in the board meetings, and the ones that were on my finance committee, they knew me a lot more than the other board members. But I had to make an effort to get to know them on a personal level, and them get comfortable with me and who I am and what my vision for the organization was. So, and that wasn't uncomfortable for me because I like meeting people and getting to know them better. But I think that's the biggest lesson I would tell someone is you got to quickly jump from what you're comfortable with to the new things that they're expecting you to do, and you need to demonstrate that you can do them uh, as quickly as possible.
Yeah, perfect. So good. I know you don't have a crystal ball, and I know everybody would love um, there to be some conversation around the very specific things that are happening in the world today, and especially that are happening to and with the nonprofit sector. But we want to make sure this is an evergreen type of podcast and experience. Um, but looking ahead, as you see the future of nonprofit leadership, what do you maybe forecast in the future? What are leaders in the future going to need to do better or focus on? Do you see it being different or more of the same?
Well, I think there needs to be more collaboration between nonprofits, and that's the way to get more resources into your organization without having to raise more money yourself.
Okay.
There are ways to provide resources to your, uh, in our case, young people without having to go ask somebody for, $100,000 gift or something. So, for example, we're just entering into a new agreement with Illumination Health and Home. And in talking with their CEO, Pooja, found out that they had a recuperative care facility that on any given night had some empty beds because they didn't have any clients at that time. And meanwhile, we've got young people at our facility that need a place to sleep at night. And in many cases, we have some funds from a state grant to put them up in a hotel. Uh, in some cases, though, we don't have enough funds to do that, and so they're staying in their car or wherever they're sleeping. So, we entered into agreement where they would let us know every day how many beds they have, and young people that needed a place to sleep that night, we'd fill out some quick paperwork, and they would go over to their facility and they would get dinner, they get a bed to sleep in, and they get breakfast the next morning, and then they can come back to our resource center and continue to work with our team to find them some more permanent housing. So that's an example of, a win-win. We're paying Illumination Foundation, an amount of money for each bed.
Right.
So they're making a little bit of money. It's less money than we're paying for a hotel when we do pay for a hotel. So, our state funds get stretched farther. So, there's opportunities like that. We call it the network nonprofit model. Like, try to network as much as you can, collaborate. We just did some housing collaborations with Pathways of Hope over the last number of months, and those have been really successful. So, there are resources out there, and there's this mindset with nonprofit leaders, especially the ones that do a lot of fundraising, like, oh, well, if I tell somebody about the great work Orangewood's doing, then the money they're giving me is going to go over to Orangewood. And, it's very, siloed. And, I tell people, look, these donors of yours, I mean, how many? I think I even asked this question at one of our luncheons. I asked everybody in the room, how many people just give to one nonprofit organization?
Right.
And
Of
nobody raised their hand, right?
course.
So
Right.
philanthropy can be spread around to lots of different organizations. Donors have a lot of different interests, and I think donors appreciate when nonprofits work together to solve problems and are collaborating. I mean, that's what private industry does. They collaborate to come up with solutions, and no different for us. And so uh, that's something I think needs to continue to accelerate. Uh, and I think we also have to try to come up with more systemic system change type initiatives to solve the problems. Um, Going back every year and asking donors for support for a program, eventually that they might get tired of that,
Naturally. Yeah.
doing the same thing every year over and over again. And not that the program's bad or anything like that, but they also want to see that you're trying to innovate and figure out a way to maybe cut those costs in half for that program by, getting us some government support or,
Right.
working with another nonprofit and collaborating. So that's I think should be a trend in the future. I don't know if it will be a trend. I mean, everything that's going on right now at all levels of government, city, county, state, federal, there's less and less money available to solve these problems. And they're going to be relying more and more on the nonprofit community to backfill those gaps. And those are big numbers. So it's going to be challenging and take a lot of innovative thinking and collaboration to be able to meet the needs of everyone that's supported right now with that combination of, you know, nonprofit support and government support, because this government support bucket is likely to decline over time, I think, regardless of which party's in the White House. Like there's just such big deficits at every level of government, and it's just at some point there's not going to be as much money available.
Right. Smart money is not betting on an increased uh, bucket of resources available from the government to support the nonprofit sector. And,
Right.
and maybe there will be, but that's not the point. The point is, are you going to budget on that, sort of hope? No, you're going to have to find some more reliable sources, predictably available sources, or more efficiencies, collaborations that'll allow you to do the same work for less investment, right? Which is exactly what you said. So it makes all the sense in the world. Well, are you still encouraging young emerging leaders to stay in and stick with the nonprofit space and to find a home in nonprofit leadership? Would you do it the same? Would you do it all over again?
Well, it's interesting. I think most of the people that get into nonprofit early in their careers are getting in because they're in the program space. They're a social work, major or psychology or
Right.
criminal justice. There aren't that many people that start out their finance careers or their HR careers or IT careers in the nonprofit space.
Yeah, right.
They start off in for profit, getting their experience. And I think for those supporting roles, it really probably, like me, one of the reasons they make the transition is they just get kind of tired of the corporate world and, who am I really working for? We're sitting here trying to make shareholders happy. Is that really kind of the mission I want to have? So they get an opportunity at a nonprofit and I mean, not all nonprofits pay pennies on the dollar, I mean, you can have a nice career in a nonprofit. Uh, and I would argue it's, very rewarding to be working for an organization with a mission that's serving others. But, I guess I would encourage people to not discount that as an option at some point in your career. I mean, I thought like at some point in time I would, probably, but I was thinking more like retirement. Yeah, I'd volunteer at a nonprofit, maybe be on a nonprofit board or help out or do something
Sure.
because I like to keep busy. But, when this opportunity came up for me, there were other things, that were personal that I needed to make a change to get some balance in my life. And it was just the right timing for that. And it's not for everybody, not everybody could make the decision I made. I also had kind of prepared myself financially and not lived beyond my means where I could do that, make that kind of decision and still get my kids through college and do all those things. So, but nonprofit industry needs talented people. And, you know, you've probably heard of or seen Unbreakable, and the message there is, a great one. And I wish the whole donor community could watch that and watch his TED Talk and realize that we're a business like everybody else. Like we've got to market, we've got to recruit, we've got to invest in our people and our IT systems, so looking at overhead percentages and things like that, it's kind of an archaic way of looking at nonprofits. I mean, we've got to grow our business, and to grow businesses, you have to invest and you have to do things that for-profit businesses do. And you have to pay people salaries that are something they can live on if you want to get talented people. So, that's something that I think is, there's a little bit of a shift there, but, I would love it if we had more, people considering the nonprofit industry right out of school, and they could do that because those starting salaries are comparable to salaries that they could get in the for-profit industry. But I don't know. We're not there right now. It would be nice to
Yeah.
get there at some point.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to take leaders like you who are willing to continue to advocate for the importance of these leadership roles in the sector and who will create pathways through your own, programs for leadership development, even as young professionals are coming out of college or coming out of maybe master's programs or whatever it might be. And if there are pathways, I'm sure people would love to invest their own mission mindedness along with the opportunity to grow and be successful in their particular industry. So, Chris, I just wanted to thank you for sharing your expertise and wisdom. There's so much here for the audience to unpack, and I'm certain that it's going to have a positive impact on so many leaders that plug into this and have the opportunity to hear this podcast. That brings us to the end of today's Lead for Good podcast. If you're interested, please also check out Mastering Fundraising, a similar format where we interview an extraordinary leader in development, here an extraordinary leader in the executive ranks of a nonprofit, to really understand the journey, but also to understand some important aspects of philanthropy and here nonprofit leadership. So thank you, Chris, for being our guest. Thank you for sharing so much. And until next time, we wish all of you the best and encourage all of you to do what you can for this world by leading for good.
Thank you for joining us for this most recent episode of Lead for Good. Our passion is helping nonprofit leaders reach their full potential as leaders, and we sincerely hope this episode has been edifying for you. Please subscribe to this podcast to not miss any of our Lead for Good conversations, We welcome your feedback, suggestions, and comments via email at hello@fulcrumleader.com. Lead for Good is a production of Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership. Please visit us on the web at www.fulcrumleader.com. Until next time, we wish you all the best and encourage you to always lead for good.